Hello everyone, I hope everything is great. So today our discussion point is the CSS. So today we discuss what is the CSS, how we create the CSS file, and how we include CSS in the HTML file. Okay, so let's start without wasting time. So I'm just created one sample file here, as you can see in the text editor, and I give the name of this file as the first css.html. I just add the simple structure here and just add the title here, and also open this file in the browser. As you can see, this is the blank file. So this thing I do just for saving the time, and today instead of using the different text editor for showing the details, we use the HTML file, and by use of this we can know the different type of HTML elements, and we learn with this tutorial. So let's start. So let me first quickly add the heading here by using the h1 tag, and this is my CSS first class. Save here, refresh, and heading will be shown here. Okay, let's add some paragraphs. So what is the CSS? Basically, CSS stands for cascading style sheet. So this is the full form of CSS, right? Okay, and why we use this CSS? Basically, we use the CSS just to style the web pages. Okay, so let's write this thing as well. So we can say CSS is a language, and we use this for styling the web page. Let me quickly refresh here. So this is my first paragraph, and as you remember, for adding the line break we can use the br tag. This is the empty tag, and we simply add here this way. Refresh. Yes. So we know the cascading style sheet full form and why we use this. So the question is here, like we can use the HTML tags for creating the layout. We can also use the HTML tags or maybe some attribute, some property of these tags for styling the elements. But what is the case if we do this? What happens? We need to add this thing for every HTML elements. Let's I have 10 of the paragraphs, and if I need to add a simple color for paragraph, that will be same for all the paragraphs, maybe color red. Okay, now what is the case? I need to add the specific attribute for the first paragraph, second paragraph, third, and till the 10th of paragraph. And when we work or when we create a website, there are lots of HTML pages, and if we have paragraph in different pages, then we need to add this thing on all the paragraphs and all the HTML pages. So this will create very embarrassing for the developer, as well as this will this will create very redundant code in our project. So that's why we just separate the styling part of the HTML, and for that we use the CSS, which is the cascading style sheet. So W3C and other organization decide that we need to separate this thing. By this way we can create the layout of our page by using the HTML, and all of the designing work we can write in a separate CSS thing. Okay, so this is the overall purpose for creating the CSS, let's discuss a brief about the history of CSS. Let's create a different paragraph here. So CSS is initially proposed in 1994 by Hakoon VM Lee. So we can say Hakoon VM Lee proposed CSS in 1994. Okay, add one BR here for break the line. And the official release of CSS, or we can say the first version of CSS, which is CSS 1, was released in 1996. So this is a small history of this CSS. Let me save this file and refresh here. So this is my second paragraph. Okay, even we can use the h2 tag. So we can add introduction, and here I add the history. This way we will create a exact structure. So this is my main heading, CSS first class, introduction, second title, and this is the part of, or we can say the definition of this exact heading, right? So let's move further and add the other section by using the h2 tag. Maybe now we can discuss the syntax of CSS, how we can, or what is the syntax of the CSS. So basically, when we discuss the syntax, CSS syntax basically have two parts. One is the selection and second one is the declaration part. Let me add the br tag just for creating the line break. Copy here. So in syntax there are two major parts. One is the selection and second one is the declaration part. What is selection and what is declaration? Let's discuss those as well. So let me give you one example. We need to change the color of this h1 element. So this h1 is the selector in CSS. So we need to write the h1 so that CSS know that we need to write the styles for this h1 tag. After that, we just add the curly braces here and write the specific property. Let's say the color and the value here, this way. And we can separate multiple properties by using the semicolons, this way. Font style, or maybe font size 14 pixel, semicolon. Okay, so this h1 is basically the selector. We say there are multiple type of selectors available in CSS. We will discuss this thing in next videos. And second part is the declaration part. So this part is called as the declaration part. Save this, refresh here, and you see this is the syntax having two parts, selection and declaration. And this is the selection part and this is the declaration part. Okay, now let's discuss how to integrate or include in HTML, how we add the CSS in HTML. So for this, let me quickly add one list, ordered list, and add three items. We can add CSS in HTML by three way. First is the external CSS. Second is the internal CSS, and last one is the inline CSS. So by these three ways we can include the CSS in HTML files. Let refresh here. Okay. So by this way I think we like recall all the HTML elements, HTML list, heading, paragraphs, and these type of things. You can see these are the three part. Okay, so external CSS, for in this, let me quickly add here. We create a separate file with extension .css. Okay, as we create the HTML file with .html extension, same way when we create a new CSS file, we need to use this extension which is .css, and then we use the link HTML element for referencing that file. Okay, let me just break down this thing so that you can easily see what's written in the single video. In internal CSS, we simply use the HTML style tag. If I add this way, then HTML I think confuse and treat this as a tag, HTML style tag for internal CSS, and for inline CSS we use style attribute of elements. Let's refresh the browser and you see by these three ways we can include CSS in HTML. In external CSS we just need to create a separate file. Let me quickly create one new file and give the name, sorry, save this file first CSS with CSS extension, save in the same location where HTML file created. Okay, and save with this file. Now in second step, then we use the link HTML element for referencing that file. So where we need to use this link HTML element in head section. By this way, link relative and give the value style sheet, and there is another attribute of this element which is href, and here we give the path and file name .css. Close this tag, save file. Currently nothing will happen. Why? Because we simply add this file and nothing is added in this CSS file. So let's follow this syntax. Let me first refer the h1 tag, as we have this h1 tag. Okay, this is the selector and this is the declaration. I add the color, maybe red, semicolons, save, go to the browser and refresh this, and you can see The color of my h1 element is updated here. Let me select another element, maybe h2. Okay, so we can reference second element by using the selector and declaration. Color blue, blue. Save this file. Now refresh, and you can see all of my h2 elements are in blue color. So now you can understand the use of CSS. We just add in the CSS file h2 color blue, and all of my h2 element in this file are with the color blue. So that is the easiness of CSS. That's why we introduced the CSS. Okay, so this is the first way uh, by which we can include CSS in our HTML. Let's move to the second one, which is the internal CSS. Okay, so internal CSS, we can use the style tag on the same place. In the head section we have a style section, and here we simply use this way. Okay, let me now select the paragraph element and use color maybe brown. Save this, go to here, refresh, and you can see the CSS is reflected on all the paragraphs. All the paragraph have the brown color now. Okay, now move to the third way, which is the inline CSS. Inline CSS, we simply use the style attribute of elements. Okay, so let me go to this section and add the inline CSS on the first list item by using the style and give the value color, maybe this one I select, and semicolon for adding the multiple properties here. Let me go to the browser and refresh, and you can see the single li element is styled with this different color, but these two li elements are not reflected. Why? Because we are applying the inline css. So inline css is basically work on a single element. Which element we include this style attribute, it reflected this thing. Okay, in internal css, basically when we need to change a specific file color, so as you can see we need to add in the head section. So this paragraph reflected in first css html file, all of the paragraphs are selected from this way. And by the external css, when we include this, now this is the global thing in which html file we need this css. We simply add this line, use the link html element and give the path, and this css is reflected on all the html file. So we can say this by use of these three types we can also create the scope of style sheets. Okay, so these are the basic introduction of CSS. Today we discussed what is the CSS, history of CSS, basic syntax, and how we include in HTML. In next video we learn more about the CSS. We discuss the hierarchy of CSS, like which CSS is important than other. Okay, so for this video, that's it. Thanks and bye bye.